The world is not as it seems. It is built on a foundation of secrets, on narratives carefully crafted to obscure a brutal truth. We inherit this world unaware of the darkness that lingers beneath the surface, shaping our lives in ways we barely comprehend. This is the story of that hidden truth, the story of colonialism. The age of exploration, they call it, a time of discovery, of adventure, of expanding horizons. But behind the romanticized facade lay a far more sinister reality. Driven by an insatiable hunger for power and wealth, European powers embarked on a ruthless campaign of conquest, claiming ownership of lands and people. From Africa to South America, Asia to North America, colonialism left an indelible mark on the world, built on the backs of the exploited and the silenced. It was a system designed to benefit the few at the expense of the many, thriving on subjugation and dehumanization. The story of colonialism does not end with the lowering of flags and the signing of treaties. The wounds inflicted by centuries of exploitation run deep, their scars still visible in the inequalities and injustices that plague our world today. From economic disparities to cultural erasure, the legacy of colonialism is woven into the fabric of our globalized world. Yet, even in the face of such adversity, a spirit of resistance persists. Movements are rising, demanding recognition, seeking justice, and fighting to reclaim what was stolen. This is the story of the enduring legacy of colonialism, a story of oppression and resilience, of exploitation and resistance. Join us as we delve into the dark heart of colonialism and explore its profound impact on the world today. The seeds of colonialism were sown in the fertile ground of ambition. European powers, driven by a thirst for wealth and dominion, set their sights on distant lands consumed by dreams of empire. What began as voyages of exploration soon morphed into aggressive campaigns of conquest. Driven by the allure of gold, spices, and resources, the colonizers laid claim to lands, justifying their actions with arrogance and assumed superiority. They spoke of civilizing missions, of bringing enlightenment to so-called savage lands. Yet, their actions betrayed a sinister agenda, one of exploitation, subjugation, and dismantling existing social structures. Treaties were signed and broken, indigenous voices ignored, their pleas for autonomy dismissed. The die was cast and the world would never be the same. Lands teeming with life, where ancient cultures flourished in harmony with nature, were transformed into battlegrounds. The clash of civilizations was brutal, leaving behind devastation and despair. Indigenous populations, intrinsically linked to the land, were forcibly removed, their ancestral homes claimed by conquerors. Families were torn apart, languages and traditions suppressed, identities threatened with extinction. Resistance, though often met with brutal force, was never fully extinguished. From South America to North America, Africa to the Pacific, indigenous populations fought back with courage and tenacity, but the balance of power was skewed. Armed with superior weaponry, colonial powers tightened their grip, crushing dissent and imposing their will. To solidify control, colonizers employed a divide and conquer strategy, exploiting existing tensions between indigenous groups. They imposed their languages, religions, and governance systems, seeking to eradicate indigenous cultures. Education became a tool of assimilation, instilling colonizers' values while erasing traditions of the colonized. Traditional justice systems were dismantled, replaced with foreign laws favoring colonizers, leaving indigenous populations vulnerable. The seeds of division sown during this era continue to fuel ethnic conflicts, political instability, and social unrest today. Colonizers pointed to infrastructure projects, railroads and plantations as evidence of progress and civilizing influence. They spoke of economic development, bringing modernity to the far corners of the globe. But this progress came at a steep price. Natural resources were plundered, leaving behind environmental devastation and ecological imbalances. The wealth extracted flowed back to colonial powers, enriching their economies while leaving colonies in poverty and dependency. The illusion of progress masked a brutal reality, one of exploitation, inequality, and systematic wealth transfer from colonized to colonizer. At the heart of colonialism lay a brutal economic machine designed to extract wealth from colonies and funnel it back to imperial centers. This was not trade but plunder, a systematic siphoning of resources that left nations impoverished. Land, once communally owned, was seized and transformed into vast plantations for cash crops. Indigenous populations, their livelihoods destroyed, were forced into labor, fueling colonial greed. Trade policies ensured colonies remained dependent on colonizers. Raw materials flowed out, feeding European factories, while manufactured goods flooded colonial markets, stifling local production. It was a rigged system, destined for colonies to lose. Wealth flowed relentlessly, extracted from land and labor, fueling empires and enriching a privileged few. Colonizers understood that true control extended beyond the physical and economic. To subdue a people, one must conquer their minds, spirits, and sense of self. Thus began a campaign of cultural erasure, dismantling indigenous identities. Traditional languages were banned, replaced with colonizers' language. Children were taught to reject their heritage, viewing their customs as backward. A generation was raised as strangers in their own land, struggling to reconcile ancestral identities with imposed values. Ancient spiritual practices were dismissed as pagan rituals and suppressed. Colonizers imposed their religions and moral codes, reshaping the spiritual landscape. Tradition by tradition, the rich tapestry of indigenous cultures unraveled. What couldn't be erased was driven underground, kept alive in whispers and secret rituals. Colonizers were masters of manipulation, crafting systems of control extending beyond their presence. Their goal was to create lasting dependency, ensuring their influence shaped destinies of the colonized. Local economies were underdeveloped, discouraged from producing goods competing with colonizers' homeland. This ensured reliance on imported goods, trapping colonies in a cycle of dependency. Education systems were designed to indoctrinate, creating a workforce serving colonial administration, lacking critical thinking to challenge the status quo. It was mental conditioning, perpetuating power imbalance. Political systems favored colonizers and collaborators, creating a ruling class beholden to empire interests. Indigenous populations were excluded from power, their voices silenced, aspirations thwarted. Seeds of future instability and conflict were sown as resentment festered beneath colonial rule. The legacy of colonialism is not confined to history books. It lives on in the present, a haunting reminder of exploitation and oppression. The world today, with stark inequalities and simmering conflicts, is a direct result of colonial systems. Arbitrary borders drawn by colonial powers, disregarding ethnic and cultural divisions, continue to cause conflict and instability. Seeds of division sown during the colonial era fuel violence and hinder development. Psychological scars of colonialism manifest in cultural alienation, loss of identity, and collective trauma. Generations grapple with consequences of a past they did not choose, struggling to reclaim heritage and forge a new path. But amidst these challenges, there is resilience. Movements for social justice, economic empowerment, and cultural revival challenge enduring legacies of oppression. The fight for a more just and equitable world continues. The 20th century dawned with winds of change sweeping across the globe. The grip of colonial powers weakened as resistance ignited hearts and minds of the oppressed. World War II, with its devastating consequences, dealt a blow to colonial empires. War-torn Europe, resources depleted, found it difficult to maintain grip on distant colonies. Ideas of self-determination and national sovereignty echoed through cities and villages. The old order crumbled, a new era within reach. From Asia to Africa, movements for independence gained momentum, fueled by desire for self-governance. A new chapter was about to be written, filled with promise and uncertainty. Leaders emerged from the oppressed, calling for justice and liberation. Mahatma Gandhi, with non-violent resistance, inspired millions in India to challenge British rule. In Africa, Kwame Nkrumah led Ghana to independence, becoming a beacon of hope for other African nations. His words, "Seek ye first the political kingdom," resonated deeply. From Algeria to Vietnam, Kenya to Indonesia, the struggle for independence took many forms. The cost of freedom was high, paid in blood, sweat and tears, but determination never wavered. Women played a pivotal role, challenging colonial rule and traditional patriarchal structures. They marched, organized and fought, their courage inspiring generations to come. Independence was not a clean break, but a messy, complicated affair. Borders imposed by colonial powers became battle lines for new conflicts. Arbitrary divisions and power vacuums led to violence and instability. Civil wars erupted, ethnic tensions flared, and newly independent nations grappled with colonial ghosts. Economic systems designed to benefit metropole proved difficult to dismantle. Newly independent nations struggled to establish self-sufficient economies burdened by debts and lack of infrastructure. The struggle for true freedom extended beyond lowering a flag or signing a treaty. It was a process of rebuilding, reclaiming lost identities, healing wounds and forging a new future. The journey to true independence was long and arduous, but the spirit of resilience endured. Decades after the end of formal colonial rule, the legacy of colonialism casts a long shadow. Economic disparities between former colonial powers and colonies remind us of exploitative systems. Cultural scars run deep. The imposition of foreign languages, religions and customs left many struggling to reconcile heritage with imposed identities. The loss of language, tradition and cultural memory continues to cause pain and alienation. Political systems modelled after colonizers struggle to address needs and aspirations of people. Corruption, instability and lack of accountability plague many former colonies. Amidst these challenges there is hope. A new generation rises, aware of past injustices, determined to build a future based on equality, justice and mutual respect. The story of colonialism is not over. It continues to unfold in the actions and aspirations of those who inherited its legacy. The challenge now is to learn from past mistakes, confront enduring legacies, and build a future where all can thrive. Education is paramount. By understanding history and acknowledging injustices, we can dismantle systems of oppression. Dialogue and reconciliation are essential. The future is a canvas for a different story. The sun may have set on the empires of old, but the shadows of colonialism stretch far into the 21st century. The most visible scars are etched upon the global economic landscape, where the wealth divide between former colonizers and the colonized remains a gaping wound. Centuries of systematic resource extraction, forced labor, and deliberately lopsided trade policies have left many former colonies economically crippled. The very foundations of their economies were designed to serve the needs of their rulers, not their own people. This economic handicap translates into a cascade of challenges: inadequate healthcare, limited access to education, and a persistent cycle of poverty that traps generations. The echoes of colonial exploitation reverberate through these struggles. Even today, the extraction continues, albeit in more subtle forms. Neo-colonial economic policies ensure that the flow of wealth often still runs from the former colonies to the centers of global power, perpetuating a system of dependence and disadvantage. The theft of land and resources was just one facet of colonialism's brutality. The assault on culture, on identity, has left deep wounds. Imagine a people stripped of their language, their traditions, their very sense of self. Today, the struggle for cultural revival is a fight to reclaim what was stolen, and to celebrate the richness and resilience of cultures that colonialism attempted to erase. The ghosts of colonialism haunt the political landscape as well. When the colonizers drew their maps, they did so with little regard for the people who inhabited these lands, their history or their social structures. They carved up continents, divided communities and grouped together people with long-standing rivalries, all in the name of imperial ambition. This disregard for pre-existing social and political realities has left a legacy of instability and conflict. Many former colonies still grapple with the challenges of weak governance, corruption, and ethnic tensions, often exacerbated by the arbitrary borders and systems of control inherited from their colonial past. The path forward requires confronting these divisions, fostering dialogue, and building inclusive political systems that respect the rights and aspirations of all citizens. It is a long and arduous journey, but one that holds the promise of a more peaceful and just future. While direct colonial rule may be over, a new form of colonialism has emerged. Neo-colonialism perpetuates power imbalances through different mechanisms. International corporations, backed by powerful governments, influence former colonies' economies. Trade agreements favor wealthy nations, and structural adjustment programs impose harsh austerity measures. The global financial system maintains this unequal playing field. Neocolonialism extends to political influence, cultural dominance, and military intervention. It seeks to maintain the flow of resources and profits to centers of power. Recognizing neocolonialism is the first step towards dismantling it. Challenge unjust systems and demand fair trade practices. Advocate for a more equitable global order. The legacy of colonialism is a responsibility to be confronted. A global movement demands a reckoning with the ghosts of empire. Truth and reconciliation commissions address the enduring traumas of colonialism. These platforms offer a space for victims to share their stories and for societies to begin healing. Museums grapple with the ethical implications of their collections. The repatriation of stolen artifacts is gaining momentum. Former colonial powers are beginning to issue formal apologies. Confronting the past is only the first step. Across the globe, a tapestry of resurgence is being woven. From bustling cities to remote villages, a cultural renaissance is underway. Languages long silenced are being spoken anew. Traditional art forms are being revived. Ancestral knowledge is being passed down. Empowerment is at the heart of this resurgence. Indigenous communities are reclaiming control over their destinies. Education is the most powerful weapon in the fight against the enduring legacies of colonialism. By shining a light on hidden truths, fostering critical thinking and promoting empathy, we can dismantle systems of oppression. Textbooks are being rewritten, curricula revised, and classrooms transformed into spaces where colonized narratives are given equal weight. Students learn to question dominant narratives and challenge stereotypes. Education extends beyond classrooms to museums, documentaries, and online platforms, raising awareness about colonialism and justice. The journey towards a just and equitable future is long and winding. It requires sustained effort and a willingness to challenge the status quo. Solidarity among the marginalized is essential. The fight for justice transcends borders and cultural differences. We must build bridges of understanding and work together for a just and equitable world. The story of colonialism is not just a tale of suffering, It is also a testament to the indomitable human spirit, the unwavering hope that has fueled generations to fight for a better future. Across the globe, from the bustling cities of Africa to the remote villages of South America, the spirit of the colonized endures. It is a spirit that refuses to be broken, a spirit that finds strength in adversity, a spirit that continues to inspire hope for a more just and equitable world. The time has come to move beyond the narratives of victimhood and oppression. It is time to write a new chapter, one that acknowledges the past but is not imprisoned by it. This new narrative must be built on a foundation of truth and mutual respect. It requires a willingness to confront the uncomfortable realities of the past. It is a collective responsibility, one that requires the active participation of all. It is about shaping our own narratives and defining our own futures. The fight for justice and equality is an ongoing struggle that requires unwavering commitment. The world we are striving to create is not one of perfect harmony or utopian ideals. It is a world where differences are respected, where diversity is celebrated, and where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. It is a world where the global community works together to address the pressing issues of our time, from climate change to poverty. Recognizing that our fates are intertwined and work together towards shared goals. The journey towards this shared future will be long and arduous. But as long as we hold on to the spirit of resilience and the belief in our shared humanity, we can create a world where peace, equality and prosperity break for all.